Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. Jackson, I am never going to run around and desert you.
I love it. You know, I thought about that.
I don't know if our listeners don't hear that, do they?
They do not hear that because it only starts when you and I pick up together.
Yeah.
But you get, of course.
I was just thinking. There's a theme song. Yeah, tell everybody what the theme song is.
So I've set it up so that when on hold, our on hold song or our waiting song is "Never Gonna Give You Up" by Rick Astley. So either one of us gets to hear a little bit of Rick Astley each week.
Yeah. Yeah, and I try to take a different piece from it every week to show my commitment to you, to sort of, recommit to the things that I'm not going to do to you in the future.
That's so great.
Today it was, I'm never going to run around and desert you. So there we go.
Oh, that's the best.
You're in Florida. Do you have a cold?
I am in Florida, and I do not have a cold, but it is allergy. So, yes.
Yeah.
I appreciate your
I don't know
concern.
if you knew this, but there's a country called Canada where it's virtually too cold for half the year to actually have allergy problems.
No allergies in the winter. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I have to reconsider that.
You had a good thing going, Mr. Jackson, and Anyway, want to report on a procrastination breakthrough from the past week.
Tell me.
Yeah, and you will go through this if you haven't already done it, because I sent the materials for the 10 times workshop in the first week of December.
Perfect.
But anyway, you'll be in for your 10 times workshop. And first of all, because of the who, not how development, I created a new word, and the word is who dat.
How do you spell that? Who dat?
No, it's WHO''D.
Okay.
Hyphen UP.
Okay. I love it.
And Who'd Up is a stronger version of Freed Up, when you get freed up. But Who'd Up.
Oh, I'm Who'd Up. I like that.
Who'd Up is where you have a bigger and better goal. And instead of you launching yourself into how to get there, you stop. You define the what and why of the project, and then you get someone else, another who, to do the how.
I like that. I like what I'm hearing a lot.
Yeah. So anyway, we've set a goal for everybody in the 10 times program that we're now going to follow quarter by quarter going forward. It's called 1,000 Who'd Up hours. Okay,
1,000 Who'd Up hours. I like that.
Yeah, 1,000 Who'd Up hours. So the timing on it is everybody's, is everybody's choice. Mm-hmm. And not only is the timing, so for example, I have 1,000 hours that will be completely Who'd Up, and you are completely Who'd Up when over the next year you don't do any of those hours that you did where you used to do the how. So it's a point in the future where every year after that, you're no longer doing the Who'd Up hours. And it'll actually take me till the 1st of January of 2023 to be completely Who'd Up.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but I'll probably get 150 or 200 over the next 12 months, which is a substantial amount to get back.
Yes.
And 100, roughly about 200, well, it is 200. 200 come back, and this is the point I was trying to make of my breakthrough. I have discovered that I never procrastinate on any project when I'm working directly with someone else.
I've discovered that same thing. That's, I look at this right here. I've never yet procrastinated a Joy of Procrastination podcast recording.
No.
It's
not only
without
that,
fail.
but I probably get ready and prepare more for our podcast so that, I'm completely here. Everything's set, the phone is at 100%, and
Yes.
I've got my procrastination priority scorecard out in front of me, and the reason is because I know that if I'm interacting with you, good things are going to happen, and that's exciting. So that's not a how, and so what I did, because I'm actually presenting this 1,000 Who'd Up hours to the 10 times workshops this quarter, I immediately came back and I did a really, we have a short version of the impact filter called the fast filter. Fast filter. And I jotted it out and I went and talked to Anna, who's our Babs and my scheduling genius, and she's the one that keeps us 12 months ahead in our schedule. And I said to her, I explained to her what I wanted. I said, I'm just going to start with, Dean, we've got a scraping noise going on. Do you know what that is? There's kind of a scraping noise.
A scraping noise.
Yeah.
Do you hear it right now?
No.
Okay. Maybe it's something I'm doing. I'll see. I'll be aware now, but I don't think I didn't hear it.
Are you multitasking? I'm
not, but let's see.
I thought maybe you were doing your podcast and sculpting at the same time.
No.
Okay. So anyway, it was just going quite noticeably there. Now it's completely silent.
Okay, good.
So I just explained it to her in 5 minutes, and she said, okay. She said, well, I'll talk to some other people, but I wanted to start off with impact builders. And I said, when I do an impact builder, I just want to talk it through with someone, and they fill in the boxes for me. Okay, and I'll go back and forth that each box is the way I like it, and then that comes to me as a PDF, and then we send it off to whoever it is. And so that was on a Wednesday, and on Thursday they had the person, a staff member who's a writer, does blogs for us, does a lot of work with people who are creating program materials, marketing materials. And she said, I'd be delighted. She said it would be exciting to do that.
Wow.
Done.
Now, this, it's funny because I just got the updated 12-month schedule for our recordings here. And, that's kind of a different thing. You're one of the, I can't think of any other person that I know that has that level of clarity on their calendar a year out. And you're the only one that have that level of interaction with all outlined out, and it works. It works. I've taken from you this approach of setting out my calendar for a year. Last year was the first year that I had done that. This year, the second. And, I find that level of clarity is good to really kind of work around. And it's funny how it's kind of counter to the way that I've traditionally thought about my time, in that my constant pursuit has been to keep my schedule clear, thinking that that's the ultimate freedom sort of thing. But what I'm finding is that there's even a deeper freedom in the freedom to have my time blocked and accounted for.
Yeah.
Which is ironic, right? You wouldn't have that kind of understanding there. It's almost like I'm able to have more freedom in the time that's not accounted for. by
Yeah, I
having the
think
time that is
if
accountable.
if I can give a little background explanation of where this started with me, and I wasn't, up until we started the workshop program. In other words, for 15 years, I was a one-on-one coach. I would think a quarter ahead because my coaching sessions with one-on-one clients, we determined them a quarter ahead, and then there was variability at the last moment. There was shopping around, there were cancellations. But once we got to the workshop program where we're putting, we started off with making a commitment to 6 people, that there were 4 dates in the future when we show up. Then once you went beyond another person and it required 6 people putting it in their calendars, it kind of locked into my consciousness that you can't fool around with these at all. Okay.
Right.
To give you an example, we were in Chicago when 9/11 happened on a Tuesday. And there were, in my workshops by this time in 2001, there were 40 to 50 individuals. I actually had 60 on the day of 9/11 itself. And so, of course, they went about their business. Some of them stayed for the whole workshop. I kept about 25 of them and 35 left. And I told them at 9 o'clock, because the New York stuff had happened before 9 o'clock Chicago time. And I said, okay,
8:45, right.
You all got to make a decision in the next 10 minutes. You're either here for the day or you're on your way back home, but you can't be somewhere halfway between. You can't be here and thinking about what's happening back home. And if you're not going to be here in the workshop, then start the trip home. And our staff worked heroically for about 4 hours, and we got everybody a mode of transportation to get back by noon. And they were on their way back. Okay. And, people, we had clients in from California, so we immediately got rent-a-cars for them. And one guy just bought a new truck, a new Econoline, and he sold it. And he had a dealer. He had a dealer in California, and he says, "Look, I'm just going to buy a truck here. Can I get a good deal from you at the other end?" The guy says, "Sure." He says, "Absolutely, I'll give you a good deal." And so he just bought an Econoline. He had 6 passengers, and they just, they just drove home. That's an entrepreneurial thing to do.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Oh, can't rent any trucks. Well, just buy one, and then resell it when you get there.
Right.
But anyway, but there were 2 individuals. I had a Thursday workshop, and 2 individuals had come in from overseas, and they couldn't get back, and they were in Chicago. So I did the workshop for 2 people. And they said, "You don't have to do that." And I said, "Nope, it's in the schedule. You're here, I'm here. Let's do the workshop." So we did it as a nonstop conversation. They do the exercise, we talk, and everything else. And to this day, one of them still in the program, and he says, to this day, he says, that's one of the high points, of my professional life is you actually doing the workshop. And
well, what's funny is I thought about that. One of the best workshops that I've ever been a part of is when I was part of a small workshop with you when I believe that it was when Peter Diamandis did his first workshop.
Oh, yeah.
We had 6 people.
In Toronto, you came
in Toronto,
the Toronto workshop. Yeah, Toronto, and I remember that workshop.
Yeah, and that was great. Sometimes, so that's kind of a setting it up in the calendar like that, and being committed to it. That's you're right. Yeah, it's in the calendar. It's gonna happen. You gotta do the workshop. 2 people or not.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
So that part for Babs and me, that part of our calendar is totally fixed. A year ahead, we actually establish it a quarter before the beginning of that 12-month period, because we have to give everybody their dates.
Yes.
You know, when they're thinking about renewing, they have to have their dates for next year. So
Yeah.
it's actually 15 months they get the news, so it's put out there. And then once those are in the schedule, then we schedule the time set aside for all our free days for the same period of time going forward.
I was going to ask you what comes first, whether it's the workshop days
no,
or
it has
the
to be the
free
workshop.
days.
It has to be the workshop because you know you're dealing with you know hundreds of other people's schedules, and you got to make that priority number one. That if you told them you're going to be there, they'll immediately launch into getting their tickets. So if you order your tickets a year ahead, I don't know, some of the airlines don't allow you to do that, but as far ahead as you can, then you don't want to fool around with their hotel, their everything about it. So by launching a date, you've actually created, an ecosystem of commitments on the part of other people out there, and you don't tamper with it. Yeah, and I've got the only workshop I've ever missed is our 30th year next year. The only workshop I've ever missed is actually my mother's funeral. My mother died, and I had another, but we didn't cancel the workshop. We had another coach in.
Yes.
And she did the workshop, and we gave everybody in that workshop an extra quarter.
Oh, that's nice. So, Dan, how many workshop days do you do? This is I'm interested to be an advocate for everybody, and I'm interested in how many workshop days you have. I'm thinking now, as I'm coming into the last quarter of the year, it's a good time to start thinking about next year. Now, for me, even. But how many workshop days and free days do you do?
I'm going to give you a number. It's between 44 and 48. And the reason it's between there is that we have workshops that'll merge.
I gotcha.
You have erosion. And so, you'll put two workshops together. So it's not 2 days, it's 1 day. And that takes a workshop day. But I'm always starting new workshops too. So, but I'm keeping it right in between the, let's say, the high 40s and 50s. Probably not skip over the 50s. And,
but that's in a quarter per quarter.
Per quarter, yeah, and then you multiply. No, that's for a year. So it's 11. It's 12 or 13, probably somewhere between 11 and 13 a quarter, depending on the merger schedule.
Okay, so that's it. So 11 to 13 workshop days per quarter, or per year. I mean, per quarter.
Per quarter,
44
and then
to 48 workshop days.
44 to 48. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought for some reason I thought it was more. I thought it was more days than that.
Well, I'll tell you the biggest year. I'll tell you how extensive it was before I had other coaches. In 1995, I had 136 workshops a year. So it was about 34 per quarter. And that I was working my tail end off.
Yeah, wow, that's something.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So now, so that's and then.
So I'm about a third of what I was.
You're hooed up.
Yeah.
You've hooed up 2/3 of your calendar there.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I have a custom beer maker from South Carolina, and he was in one of my 10 times workshops, and I said, that'd make a great custom beer. Hood up. And,
hood up. Hood up.
Hood up. And he says, you'll have it the next quarter.
Oh, that's so funny. I love it. Yeah. And then you block in the free days. How many of those do you do?
The free days, and then everything else would be scheduled probably in some cases a quarter ahead, in some cases just weeks ahead. So I've got these skeletons, if you could think of it. I've got these two skeletons, which are the workshop days and the free days. And then, Genius Network would go in, and we try to get those in a year ahead of time.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, Joe will phone us when he's putting in the Genius Network. Joe Polish will have Eunice call me regarding the all the Genius Network workshops that Babs and I are going to be in for the next year before they set the date, so that it works.
I gotcha. That's great.
Yeah. And then my podcast calls. I should say that I have other podcast series, and each of them are pushed out 12 months. So we've got those in the schedule. I mean, those are movable, because it involves one individual. But once you get up, you're involving the lives of 40 to 50 other individuals. You got to fix it and just stick to it. Yeah.
I like that. So, and that's kind of that's a really wonderful thing, and that's good that the but you do block your free days for the whole year.
For the whole year, not what we're going to do with.
I got you, but days, when they are.
But when they are available, and then Babs and I sometimes will actually go right up to the last moment. I've seen situations where we plan to use like a week away, and we'll get like the day before, and Babs says, instead of doing that, why don't we do this? And I said, oh, that's great. You know why we do that? We're both quick starts.
Yeah.
And any new idea is usually better than any existing idea.
Yes, that's that's true. That's true.
For you too.
Yes, that is absolutely the truth. But I think
that's can't do that. But you can't do that when other people have already scheduled. You can't fool around that way.
Yeah. No, I get that. So that's encouraging. Like I look at that as, I for some reason I thought there was maybe even more structure in the way that you set things up, but it's really the main chunks, or like you said, the skeleton. That's kind of what I've done too. I choose my breakthrough blueprint dates, and knowing now I've gotten into this nice rhythm where I know that, June in Toronto and London and July in Amsterdam and August in Sydney and the rest in Orlando. I know I'm getting into that rhythm, and that's kind of good to have that freedom on the schedule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then if you operate on the basis I can't schedule that far ahead because I don't know what's going to happen, then the world is in charge of you. The world's in control of you. You aren't in control of the world.
Right.
And so my feeling is people say, well, it's becoming so uncertain. I says, well, just establish a forward framework of everything you're going to do right now. But they said, I might have to, I'll change it at the last moment then, but structure it right now.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, the more you find you have more and more control over, the forward schedule. First of all, it's your time. You own it 100%.
Yes.
Nobody else owns it. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. Nobody else owns my time except where I've committed and people have paid money. That's the only place. But there, we're mutually in control because it's an agreement. It's a teamwork agreement. Yeah. So anyway, but going back to the kicking off insight here is that if I'm working with, so more and more, I don't, except with a few use of strategic coach tools. Like I love doing mindset scorecards, and I could go for 2 or 3 hours and I'll never procrastinate on a mindset scorecard. And what comes off of that for me is the outlines for my books. And I love doing the outlines for the books. So those are 2 by myself activities, but I don't procrastinate on them. I love the activity.
Right. That's my favorite. Those are my favorite verbs: brainstorm and outline.
Yeah.
Those are, if we go all the way back to the procrastination busting verb, that's the ones. Brainstorm and outline.
Yeah. Yeah. What about yourself? What's been showing up? Because it's a week ago since our last podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I've had some interesting things. Like, I've done a lot of thinking about just because of observing different people in my life in different stages, and I'm thinking about how this, kind of applies to me as well. We mentioned in Toronto when we were together there, we had Tom in the room. Tom Cook, real estate agent,
yes, indeed,
just past 70 years old. And a conversation that we had been having was, he was kind of thinking about winding down, but in the conversation, I could sense it was kind of a reluctant kind of winding down, right? Like, I could see that the actual thought going on is, well, what am I going to do now? Like, really, his whole life he's been passionate about real estate and using real estate as his kind of both entertainment and sustainment, right? It's like when you're passionate and you enjoy something, it becomes just part of your blended life, right? You love learning about it and experimenting and applying stuff. And, he's a strong quick start too. And I look at, there are other people in that room. I'm not sure whether you met Zach Pasmanic.
Yes, I did.
Okay, yes, Zach. Zach's a wonderful, guy who, for even longer than Tom now, he's not quite as old as Tom, but 40 years of, being in real estate. And he's a guy his whole life is kind of blended around that. And I can't ever imagine Zach retiring, so I find that I'm seeing people at that stage, and there's kind of a crossroads for them. Then on the other end of the spectrum, I had a friend recently who they sold their business, and they now are 100% cut off from the business. Their period of help or whatever, a transitional period, is over. So they've got the money, they've got the cut from the business, just went on a vacation. That I was thinking about their position of being 100% cut off from kind of having one foot back in the back in the business kind of thing whenever they went away, to now having zero thought of it, right? Like waking up with 100% freedom to do whatever they want to do next, and not having a clear sense of what that is, And I thought, wow, it's interesting, the opportunities for procrastination in the transitions, where there's not a clear, definite path,
Yeah, it's really interesting. I have a newish podcast series with Mike Koenig. Mike?
Yes, I do.
Do you know Mike? Yeah,
of course absolutely. I do. Yeah.
Goes back. I mean, you guys were covering the same territory in the early internet marketing days.
Yes.
And but anyway, it's called Capability Amplifier is the name of the podcast series.
Nice.
And we were talking about capability, one sense of capability in the world. And my sense, and if I think back, I don't really know that I have any capabilities unless I'm in teamwork with other people, where what I'm doing is being judged outside of myself as being valuable. In other words, you get applause, you get money, you get praise. And it's that constant being in teamwork with others, which actually tells me that I actually have the capability. I mean, I can think I have the capability in my own mind, but if I don't test it as being useful for other people, then I have a feeling I don't really know whether I actually do have that capability. And you're talking about when the person retires. I think now I'm able to do all sorts of things, but you were thinking about all those things while you still had a capability. So when the workplace, the marketplace capability no longer exists, do you still feel you have the freedom to do those things, or your sense of freedom? Do you still have that feeling, the sense of freedom?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wonder, it's kind of.
Well, I'm never going to test it, so I'm
I'm never going to test it. I mean, that's so funny.
I just want to run some sheep across the minefield here to see, hey, why don't you retire and go out there?
Yeah, I love. That's what I'm like. I'm quite enjoying I'm quite enjoying observing it and vicariously thinking it through. Like that of a. You kind of interesting that it's a different thing in your 30s and 70s, I think, or is it? I don't know. Do you feel any different in your 70s than you did in your 30s? Do you think about it differently? Were you able to think this way in your 30s?
Yeah. No, I have. First of all, my 30s was a terrible decade. My bankruptcies and my divorce and my business failure, and I had 3 major surgeries, bone breaks, which my orthopedic said probably came from extraordinary stress. Emotional stress, psychological stress I was going through. And he said you were just putting extraordinary strains on your body as you're going through. And it showed up as 3 major surgeries. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. The 30s was, if there was a decade of my life that I can apply the word suck to, the 30s. The 30s really sucked.
30s sucked. Oh, that's funny.
And so anyway, the 70s are a dream compared to the 30s. And part of the reason is just the massive more who capability I have in terms of other people's skills.
Yes.
I can think of something in 90 days from now. It's true. And I haven't really been involved too much in getting it done. And that's a dream for me.
Yeah.
That wasn't true in the 30s at all. Probably it was miserable because I lacked that capability.
Mm-hmm. That's true, right? That it comes down to the freedoms, I guess. Yeah. Maybe that was it, right? Like if you think about your time freedom, you were describing that you're kind of scrambling, right? I mean, you were kind of doing more workshops or doing more one-on-one in your 30s.
It was I wasn't even that far along. So I started. I started coaching exactly when I was 30. Mm-hmm. So it was about 2 months later, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a business model. The whole concept of coaching was not well established. It was still pretty well a corporate world in the 1970s. So I was 30 in 1974. And so you had to explain what coaching was, first of all, before you could even interest them in what you were doing. And my model wasn't well developed. And, I was in a marriage that didn't work out. And so, just a lot of headwinds. I was just getting hit with headwinds, and they all happened. And and the world sucked in the 1970s too. You had 18% inflation. Here in
Right.
Canada, it's 18% inflation, and killing it's killing people on fixed income.
Yes.
So, so yeah, it's kind of, I often think of, things that I don't see any use for at all. So I say the decade of my 30s, I said, I could have, it's like February, I could just eliminate February from the calendar.
Altogether. Yeah.
Altogether, I would add 15 on January, or 14 on January, and 14 on March. You would just go from the 35th of January to March 1st.
Right. That's perfect. Just skip it altogether. Nothing good.
Even the word February depresses me.
Because it's got that stupid R in there. February.
Yeah, February, and it's. Visually, it just has no redeeming features. I'm talking about northern climes here, and it's like raccoons. I look at raccoons and I said, I know every species is supposed to be important, but I can't see how this one serves any purpose at all. Raccoons,
don't even
just eliminate raccoons.
Let's not even get started on leap years. They're trying to be all awkward with the 28 or 29 days. I mean, come on.
Yeah. So anyway, but that was bad. That was a bad decade. And but when I look back, it was a bad mindset decade for me. I didn't have the right mindsets, and if I compared the mindsets that I had about myself, about my relationship with other people, my mindsets about how you actually create a success and achievement in the world. I just didn't have the right mindsets back then. I had skills, but I didn't have the mindset. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty good now. I have to tell you, if I'm operating on a bad mindset or an incorrect mindset today, it doesn't go more than 24 hours and I've shifted it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because you know more. Yeah, that's really, you've had more.
Well, I immediately know where to look. I immediately know where to work. If something's not working, I immediately go to my own mindset about it before I look at anything else. I say, you're just not thinking about this in the right way.
Yeah,
and that's actually gives you a lot of sense of control when you know that how you're looking at it is really the key to improving it.
Yes. I find that to be true for almost everything. It's all on the inside. That's for sure.
Yeah. Not everybody believes that, there's a considerable portion of the global population who have another notion of what's wrong.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
What's God. Yeah.
But
all you have to do is look at the news every day and know that some people don't know their own mindsets or what are causing most of their unhappiness.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting, when you're talking about the mindset things, like when I've always kind of had that, that thought, but when I read Jamie Smart's book, Clarity, that was something that kind of really was a great book in just getting that absolutely clear that everything is 100% from the inside out, not from the outside in. Everything is, we're creating that reality based on our thoughts and what we're saying. The greatest, our brains and minds are the greatest special effects department in the world, that we can create all these emotions and all this reality from our thoughts.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting because I'm thinking continually about the distinction that you established sometime back between Cloudlandia and the mainland.
Yeah,
and I was just reading. I think it happened, or it was revealed yesterday, that there were hacking of Facebook. 50 million personal accounts on Facebook.
I just saw a headline about that, but I don't know what happened. What actually?
Well,
what was
the whole point is that it's not a good year for Facebook for a lot of different reasons. I mean, they're hitting a lot of headwinds, and they're mainland headwinds. They're not digital headwinds. They're
yes,
they're mainland head. And I mean, that's a mainland experience. Getting 50 million of your 50 million, because it affects the trust level of the organization. I mean, if you know that the organization that says we'll protect your personal information, well, they've never promised us that. I mean, Facebook's never promised that, and they've resisted promise you. Their business model is premised on resisting promise you that they will protect your personal information, because in fact they want to do anything they can do with your personal information, but now he's got hacked, and I get a feeling that the walls are going up around Facebook. I get a feeling that they're in a defensive position now, and where a couple of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, they were like cosmic cultural heroes. Now he isn't, and the organization itself, we're starting to feel towards digital institutions the way we feel for a lot of mainland institutions. Can't really trust the people, when they have a lot of power, they have a lot of wealth, and they have a lot of stuff. You don't really trust them.
Yeah.
I got a feeling he doesn't have my best interests at heart. Not nothing illegal or anything else. He's just not contemplating anything, of taking my. And there's a new guy, not a new guy, but an old guy is coming back. He says, "I'm going to create another internet."
I saw that too.
Internet, yeah. And he says,
one of the founders of the internet.
Yeah, one of the founders of the internet says, "I'm going to build another internet." He says, and now we've learned what kind of safeguards for individuals you have to build in. And it's going to be called Solid.
Yeah.
The platform is going to be called Solid. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because it shows that the models out there, while as good as they are and how they've leaped things forward, they have deficiencies. And he's picking up and he says, "I'm going to build it." And one of the big deficiencies is the safeguarding of personal privacy and property, And so I find that it's great. It's very stimulating to me that someone is thinking in those terms.
Yeah. And, last week we kind of mentioned the one-to-one future, and we talked about that idea of giving voluntarily kind of giving up our privacy for convenience is a big thing. Like, it's an interesting dynamic, our desire for our privacy to not be revealed, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yet our willingness to, it's just so much more convenient to let Amazon store my credit card so that I don't have to enter in my credit card every time I want to buy something.
Yeah.
And for them to know what I actually prefer to purchase, so that I can go back and see what I bought and say, order that again. Or so it's really an interesting dynamic, right? That we have of, we want to protect our anonymity, but we also want to.
Yeah, I think it's I'm reading a book right now, and I have a discussion group series every quarter with a dozen strategic coach clients who are local, and it's been going for 17 years. We're actually in our 17th year every quarter, and really interesting. And then people will recommend a book, so we have a book every quarter, and then the members of the group send in articles,
Yes.
usually in digital link, and then I have a team member who actually downloads all the links and formats it in 11 by or 8.5 by 11, and then we create it into a book.
I love that. I remember seeing a few of those. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's usually the downloaded article book is more interesting than the single author book because it's more dimensions. It's got a lot more dimensions to it, and no dimension demands too much of your time.
Right.
The book is a single dimension, and the author demands a lot of your time. Except me, mine only lasts an hour. Yours only lasts an hour.
That's exactly right.
But the one for next time is called "Who Do You Trust?" And it's talking about the shift of trust in the world right now from mainland institutions to digital networks, and it's a profound shift. It's a very profound shift going on right now, and a lot of the seemingly things falling apart of the daily news. I went through the New York Times this morning. We got the New York Times in paper version, and I just went through, and there were about in the front section there were about 26 articles, 25 of which had a negative headline about something falling apart or something at risk.
Wow.
And and I said, it's like a Richter scale, we're like at a 4 Richter scale right now as far as institutional solidity, And I said, including the New York Times itself,
yes,
being shaken because, there's probably floors in the New York Times building where they used to have 100 people on the floor, and now they've got 35, and the rest of the space is empty. And it's hard for the people on that floor to think that their future is bigger than their past.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something. I mean, and it's kind of interesting that you have been reading the paper versions of it. I haven't asked you this in a while, but I know you used to read 6 newspapers.
6. Yeah, a day.
And do you still get the physical newspapers, or is it mostly online?
Yeah, we during the week I get 2. I get the Wall Street Journal, which to me is still the best newspaper in the world.
Yeah,
and then I get the local Toronto, the National Post.
Yes,
which is barely tolerable, but it's better than the others. We've got 4 dailies in Toronto. Toronto's very unusual in North America that they still have 4 daily papers.
Yeah,
London's got about London must have 10 daily newspapers, and papers. Yeah. So I read it, but I'm noticing, the New York Times, we used to get a daily, and the rest of them, I just let them go because they just piled up and I didn't get to them. And there's only so many fireplace fires you can have to get rid of that amount of paper.
even with 3 houses on the compound now, it's only
yeah.
That's pretty funny.
You can't in the cities, you can't just take a pile of newspapers out
and burn them. That's so funny.
No, they send people around. They discourage you from doing that.
Yeah. Well, the recycling. It's funny how I've never asked you this, but I always said, my top thing was that I like to wake up every day and say, what would I like to do today, as kind of a time metaphor for the freedom that I look for. But I've never thought to ask you, how would you describe what yours is? Like, because I'm fascinated by how your days are much more structured. Do you prefer?
I have. Yeah, I mean, I have my structured days, which are workshop days, and on a workshop day, there's there's three things that I'm going to do, but the three things have to do with the workshop. So I never put any competing activity with the workshop because it's we have to show up at around 7:45 in the morning to prepare for the workshop. Yeah. And it goes to about 5:45. So it's it's a 10-hour stretch, and my attention has to be 100% there, and I don't do any other coach work.
Right.
But I do have ongoing conversations with workshop members when they come in, and then I'm trying out new concepts. So that all the three things, I set myself three things for the day. All three of them are within the framework of the workshop on a workshop day. Okay, and then I have days, which are creating new materials, actually getting materials ready for two workshops now, because I have the 10 times in the Game Changer now.
Yeah.
And then I have podcasts. And yours is the only one that I do that's not during business hours. This is Sunday, and which really works for me and it works for you. So that's why we both chose it. I don't know if we chose it because it works for us. It was just we agreed to do it on a Saturday, and you said, let's do it on a Sunday.
Yeah, let's do it tomorrow. Let's get going. Right, exactly. I mean, that's the reality of what and then you're like, okay, how about next week?
Hey, wait a minute. We didn't agree to do it on Sundays. The only thing we agreed on was tomorrow.
Yes. Oh, that's so funny and true.
Hey, wait a minute.
but it does work. It does work. Really
it does
great.
Work. It does work. Yeah, because I always do work on Sunday, and Saturday I never do any work. The only thing coming close to work is when you and I have lunch at Jock's Bistro.
Yes, right.
But that's usually just a tour of the horizon, not real work.
No, that's not real work. Exactly.
Yeah. So I do. I mean, three things. I coach, I create new materials for the workshop, and then I do marketing, and podcasts would fall into the area of marketing, and also product development, because I get a lot of ideas out of the podcast discussions. Then I have videos that I do. I do probably 5 to 8 videos a month, usually in two. Probably it might take me 90 minutes to do. They're short videos, 5 minutes, 6 minutes here. And webinars. I do webinars, and very, very infrequently I'll do an actual live presentation.
But doing
Toronto
that
or Chicago.
Q&A, even that is Q&A, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm doing it more and more with panels. Like I'll have 3 or 4 veteran, coach people on a panel. And then what I do is I'll do a concept and just explain it for about 5 minutes. And then I talk on a panel that this is the concept, and they explain to the audience what they do with the concept, how they've actually put it into play. And it works like a charm.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's nothing like seeing something like really applied in the field. That's
social proof. I mean, I don't know whose name that was. Do you know who created the concept of social proof?
It was Robert Cialdinius who brought it to my attention.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That somebody saying great things about your product is always more effective than you saying great things about your product.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
If they have credibility.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, what did we cover today?
Well, let's go back to the beginning. I mean,
we shot through that hour really, really quickly.
We really did. But the thing I was really, what I was interested in getting was this insight into how you're kind of planning your calendar here, because that's what's on my mind right now as I'm going forward. Like I look at that. I schedule my what would be the equivalent of the workshop days, my breakthrough blueprint events. So there's nine of those times 3 days.
9
that's
events.
20. Yeah, nine
7.
events, 27 days.
It's actually 5 days, because you have a day getting there and a day getting back, usually, right? Or something.
Oh yeah, I guess if you count that, I mean, the ones here in Orlando are literally right down the street from me. So
that day.
Yeah, there's that day. But I count those. Count those the main days there, and then the podcasts. I've done a really good thing of blocking off my the ones I do with you, because you're a fixed. It's you and I, and we can coordinate our schedules through the whole time, and the Sunday time works out well. For the other podcasts that I do, the other two main ones, the listing agent lifestyle and my more cheese less whiskers, where I've got a different guest each week, I block off those times. Like this Friday was the time for those, so I kind of do every other Friday, as I'll do 2 of those, at a time at 10 o'clock and noon. And then 2 Thursdays a month I set aside for all of the live calls that I do I do a live call for our Go Agent members, and then I do a live call for my email mastery program. And both of those calls are set up where it's live, coaching and brainstorming and interacting with people who have things that they want to talk about and get shared. So there's no real preparation for none of it. Do I have any real preparation, which is great. And so what I'm finding is that's been a new kind of thing that I've embraced. I came a long way, because I used to look at like having anything on my calendar as kind of a blight, right? It was almost like a setting up that's not a successful day in a way. But now I'm realizing that having those days set up allow the other days to be completely free in a different way, because I'm not exerting any mental energy trying to make stuff happen or figure things out. I know with certainty what's going on.
Yeah. I am just thinking this thing of you have as much control over the future as you're intentional about things that you want. In other words, people say, I don't have any control over the future. Well, that's their intention, so they have no control over their future. Or if you say, I will continually exert more control over my own future, well, that's your intention. That'll be true. So to a certain extent, it has to do with that fundamental mindset, whether you feel you can or you can't, or you want it or you don't want it. But whatever that happens to be, that's what you're going to get. I just wanted a lot of control over my future, so that the world can't. I don't want the world to interfere with me. Basically, I don't want to get interrupted by the world. I don't want to get blindsided by the world.
Right.
I don't want to get splashed by the world. So I've created all sorts of protections so I can just pursue my own intentions as I go forward. And I'm immensely better at 74 than I was at 34. And And I see this as a real growth skill that that doesn't diminish as you get older. It actually gets better. First of all, what you think is important actually simplifies a lot as you get older. I've noticed that.
Well, it's really the big evolution for me, especially in the last year, since we kind of had this conversation on one of our podcasts, that my shift from waking up and say, what would I like to do today, to adding in just the thought of what would I like to do tomorrow? Because I find that the days that I wake up where I've already thought ahead what I would like to do today, where it's already organized, are the most relaxing, enjoyable, both in every way, both on free days and focus days. Like knowing that I've woke up, knowing that all the wheels were in motion to make it so that I can go to a breakthrough blueprint workshop and not have to have any thought of anything else. You can't pull that off in one day. I can't wake up today and say, you know what I'd like to do today? I'd like to have a dozen people in a room here and talk about marketing for the next 3 days. That has to require some thinking ahead and say, I'd love that to happen. So when do I want that to happen? I want that to happen, on these 9 times during the year.
Yep. Yeah. And plus you can get other who's involved with that. And
that's it. Then that's it. Now I'm completely hooed up. And all I do is no, but that's true. It's like, that's the point. Yeah. All I do now is those things. It's so great. I love this. Hoot up.
That's the only alteration I would see having your black sweatshirts or black t-shirts that just have the word "hoot up" on them, on the front.
Well, that could be. Yeah, we could have. That could be the catchphrase of my cow, because that's who I've been wearing. My cow is as a symbolic representation of being hoot up.
Yeah. Wonderful talk, Dean. I love it.
Thanks, Dan. Bye.
Bye.